Inside one of the grand homes, laughter echoes faintly as the family of three sits down for dinner. The table is set and the room is warm, filled with the comforting aroma of Sarah's home-cooked meal. 45-year-old Thomas smiles warmly at his wife Sarah, a woman of 40-year-old whose elegance is matched only by her kindness. She radiates happiness as she talks about her day, her voice soft and soothing. Across the table sits 22-year-old Lily, her daughter from a previous marriage, her beauty youthful and effortless. She chats animatedly about her university life, unaware of the pair of eyes lingering on her a little too long. Thomas chuckles at her stories, playing the role of the devoted stepfather. His exterior is impeccable, a charming smile, a reassuring tone, the perfect family man. But beneath the polished surface lies a dark obsession, one he's been nursing in silence for years. The house is silent now. The clock strikes midnight and a faint creak echoes through the dimly lit hallway. Thomas steps out of his bedroom, his movements calculated, his breath slow and deliberate. He stands at Lily's door, his hand resting lightly on the doorknob. For a moment, he hesitates, his expression flickering between restraint and something darker. The soft hum of her music filters through the door, accompanied by the faint rustle of her movements inside. Instead of entering, Thomas moves to the living room, where the large bay window overlooks the backyard. He sits in the shadows, his eyes fixed on Lily's illuminated bedroom window upstairs. From this vantage point, he watches her silhouette as she moves around her room, oblivious to his gaze. His smile is faint but unsettling, a mix of admiration and possession. His thoughts are his own, twisted and unspoken. "She's so beautiful," he murmurs under his breath, the words hanging in the air like a chilling secret. Upstairs, Sarah sleeps peacefully, her trust in her husband unshaken. To her, Thomas is the man who saved her after years of heartbreak. He's the anchor in her life, the father figure Lily never had. But Sarah doesn't see the way his hand lingers just a little too long on Lily's shoulder, or how his gaze follows her when she walks by. She doesn't hear the late-night creaks of the floorboards as Thomas roams the house. From his shadowed perch in the living room, Thomas whispers to himself, "She's everything I ever wanted." His gaze darkens as he leans back into the chair, the glow of the window casting eerie shadows across his face. The scene ends with Thomas standing outside Lily's door once more, his hand brushing against the doorknob. The sound of her laughter from earlier in the night replays in his mind. With a quiet sigh, he walks back to his bedroom, slipping into bed beside Sarah. As he closes his eyes, the viewer is left with the unsettling realization: this isn't a man protecting his family, this is a predator in disguise living among them. Ambitious and full of life. As a university student, her days are filled with classes, late-night study sessions, and laughter with friends. To her, Thomas is the rock of their family, a dependable stepfather who's always there with advice or a comforting word. "Thanks, Thomas," she says one afternoon after he helps her fix her laptop. "You're really the best." She smiles warmly, genuinely appreciative. But what Lily doesn't see is the flicker of something far darker in his eyes as she walks away. To her, Thomas is safe. To Thomas, Lily is an obsession growing out of control. She often confides in him, sharing her dreams and fears. She talks about David, her new boyfriend, a charming, confident young man who sweeps her off her feet. Lily's excitement is palpable as she recounts their dates, her eyes sparkling with happiness. For Thomas, however, every mention of David is like a knife twisting in his chest. Thomas masks his jealousy behind a veneer of fatherly concern. One evening, Lily and David are on the couch, laughing over a movie. Thomas watches from the doorway, his jaw tightening. "Don't you think it's getting late, Lily?" Thomas interjects, his voice calm but firm. The couple looks up, startled. "Just a few more minutes," Lily says, slightly embarrassed. Thomas forces a smile. "Of course. I just don't want you overdoing it with exams coming up." Later, Thomas begins to interfere more deliberately. When David sends Lily a sweet goodnight text, she never receives it. Thomas has blocked his number on her phone without her knowledge. When David leaves flowers on her doorstep, Thomas discards them before she sees them. But his most sinister move comes in the form of a burner phone. Thomas uses it to send Lily cryptic, hurtful messages, pretending to be David. "You're too clingy," one text reads. "Maybe we should take a break," says another. Lily, confused and heartbroken, starts pulling away from David. "I don't know what's wrong," she confides in Thomas, tears welling in her eyes. Thomas places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his touch lingering. "Maybe he's not the right one for you, Lily. You deserve someone who truly cares." His words plant seeds of doubt, and he watches with satisfaction as her relationship begins to crumble. Sarah notices the changes in Thomas. His protective instincts toward Lily have shifted into something unsettling. He hovers around Lily more than usual, always finding excuses to be near her. At first, Sarah dismisses it as harmless overprotectiveness. But one evening, as she cleans out Thomas's coat pockets, she finds something that freezes her in place. Tucked behind their family photo in his wallet is an old picture of Lily, a candid shot from years ago. Her heart pounds as she stares at it. Why would he keep this? That night, Sarah confronts him. "Why do you have this picture of Lily in your wallet?" Her voice trembles with a mix of confusion and fear. Thomas looks at her calmly, his expression unreadable. "I keep it to remind myself to protect her," he says smoothly. "She's like a daughter to me, Sarah." But his words don't sit right. Sarah's instincts tell her something is wrong, but she doesn't press further. Instead, she begins to watch him more closely, her doubts growing like a shadow over their marriage. Sarah tries to ignore her unease, but it's impossible. She notices how Thomas's eyes linger on Lily when he thinks no one is watching. She starts waking up in the middle of the night to find Thomas's side of the bed empty, only to hear faint creaks on the stairs. The once perfect family facade begins to crack, and Sarah realizes that the man she married might not be the man she thought he was. Late at night, when the house is silent, Thomas sits in his dimly lit study, his face illuminated by the glow of his computer screen. His searches are chillingly specific. Undetectable poisons, how to stage an accidental death, and ways to neutralize suspicion. On his desk, a notebook lies open, filled with meticulous plans. Diagrams of the house, timelines, and scribbled calculations litter the pages. He writes notes to himself in a methodical, almost detached manner. Slip into her drink during dinner. Ensure alibi. Lily must see me elsewhere. Thomas's mind is a storm of dark thoughts, but his outward demeanor remains as calm and composed as ever. To Sarah and Lily, he appears to be the same devoted husband and stepfather. Yet, every small act he performs, preparing coffee, offering to handle household chores, or even refilling Sarah's medications, feels laced with ulterior motives. The tension in the air is palpable, though neither Sarah nor Lily can quite put their finger on it. One rainy afternoon, while tidying Thomas's study, Sarah stumbles upon something that freezes her in place. Tucked away in a drawer is a worn leather journal. The cover looks innocuous, but when Sarah opens it, her blood runs cold. The pages are filled with obsessive entries about Lily, detailed observations of her daily routines, descriptions of her smile, even lists of her favorite foods and colors. Lily looked beautiful today in her white dress. She doesn't realize how radiant she is. She deserves someone who truly understands her. Someone like me. Sarah's hands tremble as she flips through the pages, her stomach churning. The entries grow darker and more unhinged as they progress, hinting at his desire to remove anyone who stands between him and Lily. Sarah doesn't appreciate her. She's always critical. Lily deserves better. David is a distraction. He doesn't see her the way I do. He must go. The realization crashes down on Sarah like a wave. Thomas's obsession is far worse than she feared. She knows she has to act quickly to protect her daughter, but fear grips her. How much does Thomas already suspect? Thomas, ever the manipulator, begins to sense Sarah's growing unease. He watches her carefully, noting the way her gaze lingers on him during dinner, or how she avoids being alone with him. Determined to stay one step ahead, Thomas changes strategy. He begins showering Lily with attention, subtly weaving a web of manipulation around her. He buys her thoughtful gifts. Bracelets she once admired, a rare edition of a book she loves, and always with a disarming smile. "You deserve to be treated like a princess," he says warmly as he hands her the bracelet. Lily blushes, grateful for his kindness, completely unaware of the darker intentions behind it. At the same time, Thomas works to discredit Sarah in Lily's eyes. He plants small seeds of doubt during their conversations. "I think your mom's been really stressed lately," he says casually one evening. "She mentioned something about you being too distracted with David." Lily furrows her brow. "She said that?" "Don't take it personally," Thomas adds quickly, his tone soothing. "She just wants what's best for you. But I think she can be too harsh sometimes. You're doing great, Lily." His words land with precision, driving a wedge between mother and daughter. Sarah knows she has to leave, but Thomas is always watching. She begins making secret plans, researching safe houses and contacting an old friend she can trust. But every step feels perilous, as if Thomas is lurking around every corner. One night, she tests her theory, leaving her phone in the living room while pretending to sleep. Sure enough, she hears the faint creak of the floorboards as Thomas quietly retrieves it. Watching through a sliver in the bedroom door, Sarah's heart pounds as she sees him scrolling through her messages, his expression cold and calculating. The stage is set for a dangerous confrontation as Sarah races to protect her daughter while Thomas tightens his grip on Lily. The storm raged outside, rain lashing against the windows, thunder rumbling like an omen of what was to come. The house, usually so calm, was alive with tension. Sarah stood in the doorway of Thomas's study, clutching the journal in her trembling hands. Her face was pale, her voice tight with anger and fear. "You're sick, Thomas," she hissed, her words cutting through the crackling air. This obsession with Lily, it's disgusting. I'm going to tell her everything, and the police." Thomas, seated in his armchair, remained unnervingly calm, his fingers steepled under his chin. His eyes, dark and calculating, met hers with an unnerving steadiness. "You're making a mistake, Sarah," he said softly, almost tenderly, as if scolding a child. "You don't understand. I'm doing what's best for Lily. I'm protecting her." Sarah's laugh was sharp and bitter, a sound that echoed through the room. "Protecting her? From what? From you?" Thomas had planned for this moment. He had seen it coming, felt the shift in Sarah's behavior, the coldness in her gaze. Tonight was the night to act. As the argument escalated, he moved to the kitchen under the guise of preparing tea, all while Sarah continued her tirade from the living room. Her voice trembled with desperation, but her resolve was unshaken. Thomas's hands worked methodically, his movements precise. From a hidden compartment in the cupboard, he retrieved a small vial of clear liquid, the poison he had researched for weeks. He added a few drops to Sarah's cup, stirring slowly, his face void of emotion. Returning to the living room, he handed her the tea with steady hands, masking his malevolence with a gentle expression. "You're stressed," he said, his voice honeyed with concern. "Please, Sarah, let's talk this through calmly." Sarah hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she looked at him. But she was too angry, too consumed by the weight of what she'd discovered to notice the slight tremor in his voice or the fleeting flicker of darkness in his eyes. Sarah took a sip, her hands still clutching the journal, her knuckles white. "You won't get away with this, Thomas," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "I'll make sure Lily knows exactly who you are." Thomas leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "I already have," he whispered. Her brow furrowed, confusion crossing her face. Then it happened. A sharp gasp escaped Sarah's lips as her body betrayed her. The teacup fell from her hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. She clutched her chest, her breaths shallow and rapid, her eyes wide with terror. Thomas stood, watching her with an eerie calm. "You should have trusted me, Sarah," he said, his voice low, almost tender. "Now, I can protect Lily forever." As Sarah collapsed to the floor, her vision fading, the last thing she saw was Thomas's cold, triumphant smile. The following morning, the storm had passed, but the house was draped in an unsettling silence. Lily sat at the kitchen table, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Thomas moved around her, his demeanor the picture of a grieving husband, yet his gaze lingered on her with something far more sinister. "I'm here for you, Lily," he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'll take care of everything. You're not alone in this." Lily, vulnerable and overwhelmed by the sudden loss of her mother, leaned into him, seeking solace. She felt safe with him. He was all she had left. Thomas hid his satisfaction behind a mask of sorrow. The pieces of his plan were falling into place. With Sarah gone, there was nothing standing between him and the life he envisioned with Lily. But as he embraced her, whispering soft reassurances, the storm clouds in Lily's mind began to stir. Something didn't feel right, though she couldn't yet place it. The house had grown eerily silent since Sarah's death, the air heavy with grief and unanswered questions. Lily, still struggling to process her mother's sudden passing, found herself wandering through Sarah's room one rainy afternoon. As she opened drawers and sifted through her mother's belongings, she stumbled upon a leather-bound notebook tucked beneath a pile of scarves. Curious, she opened it, her heart sinking as she realized it wasn't just any journal. It was filled with notes, hastily written observations, and deeply unsettling suspicions. Thomas, too protective of Lily, watches her when he thinks no one notices. Found an old picture of Lily in his wallet, hidden. Something's not right. Planning to leave, must tell Lily the truth. Each entry felt like a dagger to Lily's heart. Her hands trembled as she read her mother's fears, her unease mounting with every word. Was it possible? Could her stepfather, the man who had always been so kind, so supportive, be the monster her mother had feared? Lily tried to push the thoughts away, to convince herself that Sarah had been mistaken, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew stronger when David, her ex-boyfriend, showed up unannounced one evening. "Lily," David began, his voice low and urgent, "I need to talk to you about Thomas. Something's off about him." Lily frowned, crossing her arms defensively. "David, not now. I'm dealing with enough already." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "But I've seen things. He used to follow us when we were out together, watching from a distance. And after your mom died, I started thinking about all the weird vibes I got from him. You need to be careful." David's words sent a chill down Lily's spine, but she hesitated. Could she really believe him? Yet, as they talked, he mentioned things that matched Sarah's notes, things Lily couldn't ignore. Together, they began piecing together the fragments her mother had left behind. They uncovered more chilling details. Thomas's late-night searches on the family computer, the cryptic texts Lily thought were from David, and the suspicious circumstances surrounding Sarah's death. The puzzle was coming together, and the picture it painted was horrifying. The confrontation began on a quiet evening. Lily, trembling but resolute, had decided she couldn't live in fear anymore. She devised a plan with David. He would wait nearby, ready to intervene if things escalated. Lily called Thomas into the living room, her voice calm but her heart pounding like a drum. "Thomas, I found Mom's journal," she said, her eyes locked on his. For a brief moment, Thomas's face flickered with something dark. Fear, anger, or perhaps guilt. But he quickly replaced it with his usual charm, sitting across from her with a sigh. "He was paranoid, Lily," he said softly, his tone almost condescending. "Your mother, she didn't trust anyone. You know that." But Lily didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled out the burner phone she'd found hidden in his study. "And this? Was she paranoid about this, too?" Thomas's mask cracked, his eyes narrowed, and the room seemed to grow colder. "Where did you find that?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Lily stood her ground. "Why, Thomas? Why did you pretend to be David? Why did you manipulate me?" The tension in the room became unbearable. Thomas leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because I love you, Lily. I've always loved you. Don't you see? Your mother was in the way. She never understood us." Lily's stomach churned as his words sank in. "You killed her," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You killed her because of me." Thomas stood, his composure unraveling. "I did it for us, Lily. She was going to take you away from me. I couldn't let that happen." Lily backed away, her heart racing as Thomas's expression twisted into something unrecognizable. "You don't have to be afraid," he said, stepping closer. "We can be together now without anyone standing in our way." "Stay away from me," Lily shouted, tears streaming down her face. But Thomas didn't stop. "Lily," he murmured, his voice almost pleading. "Don't reject me. I've done everything for you. I've loved you more than anyone ever could." As he reached for her, David burst into the room, tackling Thomas to the ground. The two men struggled, furniture crashing around them. Thomas fought with a strength born of desperation, but David managed to subdue him, just as police sirens wailed in the distance. Lily, trembling and clutching her mother's journal, watched as the man she once trusted was taken away, his true nature laid bare. The air was thick with tension as Lily stood frozen, her heart pounding violently against her ribcage. Thomas's eyes burned with a sinister mix of rage and desperation. His once charming demeanor had completely unraveled, revealing the monster beneath the facade. "You don't understand, Lily," Thomas snarled, stepping closer to her. "Everything I've done has been for you, for us. Don't let him ruin this." Lily held her ground, her trembling hands clutching her mother's journal tightly. "There is no us, Thomas. There never was." Her voice was steady, but fear coursed through her veins. Suddenly, the door slammed open. David stormed in, his eyes blazing with determination. "Get away from her!" he shouted, charging toward Thomas. The room erupted into chaos. Thomas lunged at David, the two men colliding with a brutal force that sent them crashing into furniture. The coffee table splintered under their weight, and the sound of their struggle echoed through the house. "David!" Lily screamed, her voice breaking as she watched the fight escalate. Thomas fought like a man possessed, his strength fueled by his unhinged obsession. He grabbed a fireplace poker, swinging it wildly, forcing David to duck and stumble backward. "You're ruining everything!" Thomas bellowed, his voice a guttural roar. He raised the poker, ready to strike, but Lily, summoning every ounce of courage, grabbed a heavy lamp and smashed it against Thomas's back. The blow made Thomas stagger, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He turned toward Lily, his face contorted with fury. "You think you can stop me?" he hissed, advancing on her. As Thomas closed in on Lily, David tackled him again, grappling for the fireplace poker. The weapon clattered to the ground, and all three of them fought in a desperate frenzy. In the chaos, Thomas managed to grab a knife from the kitchen counter. He lunged toward David, the blade gleaming under the dim light. "You'll never take her from me!" he screamed. But in his blind rage, Thomas miscalculated. David twisted out of the way, and Lily, with a surge of adrenaline, pushed Thomas from behind. Off balance, he stumbled backward, his momentum carrying him directly into the knife. Thomas gasped, his eyes wide with shock as he looked down at the blade buried in his chest. For a moment, the room fell silent, save for the sound of his labored breathing. He sank to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. "Lily," he whispered, his voice weak. "I did it all for you." And then, with a final shudder, Thomas collapsed, his obsession consuming him in death as it had in life. The house was eerily quiet as the sirens grew louder in the distance. Lily and David stood together, trembling but resolute, as they dialed the police and told them everything. When the authorities arrived, they found the grisly scene and began piecing together the horrors Thomas had kept hidden. His burner phone, his journal, and Sarah's notes painted a chilling picture of manipulation, obsession, and murder. The neighborhood was rocked by the revelations. The charming man they had all admired was unmasked as a dangerous predator, his crimes sending shockwaves through the community. In the days that followed, Lily struggled with the weight of everything she had endured. She grieved for her mother, the pain of her loss cutting deep. But she also found strength in David's unwavering support. "You're not alone," David said softly one evening as they sat together on the porch. The sunset bathed the world in a warm, golden glow, a stark contrast to the darkness they had just escaped. Lily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay, but I'll try." Together, they began the slow process of healing, determined to leave the trauma behind and build a future free from Thomas's shadow.